Hey everybody, welcome to the Master Wing channel. I've got a very interesting video for you guys. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think in the comments. Hopping right in, 598. What does that number signify? That stands for 598 total turns in Wingspan. That may not seem like a lot to you guys as much as we all play Wingspan, but if you break that number down, that equates to 23 games of Wingspan. So as of October 2022, I have won 23 games in a row. And that is a record according to this online server. It's a Wingspan tournament Discord, and it's where players can hop online and play players all across the globe. They play all the time, and if you're into competitive Wingspan, that's where you should go. I know you may be suspicious, how can this guy claim this record? But every game is logged, win, lose, or draw, and each player has to verify who wins. So it's very difficult, I'm sure you know, to string together a series of wins, and the previous record was 22. And so when I hit 23, I was pretty pumped, and that's my small claim to fame until someone breaks the record and hits 24. The other part of this video, I'd like to show just some tips or common themes that I saw during my 23 game win streak. And like I said, maybe you could be the next person to break the record. All right, first tip, plan your first 4 moves. This seems very obvious and pretty straightforward. This is not a mind-blowing tip, but I see this all the time where players rush their first hand. They're kind of worried that, they're taking too much time or the other player's waiting on them. They're really excited to play this one bird, and they neglect to have a clear vision of their first 4 turns. Obviously, you're going to be planning throughout the game, but you need to have a really solid start, in my opinion, if you're going to go for the win streak. And every game or decision needs to be important. Which leads me to my next tip is make every move count. Your most important move is your current move. All right, and I know some turns can seem pretty straightforward, but you need to think critically every time, because if you're really going for the 24 games to break my record, that's 624 total turns, which is a lot, and you need to take every turn seriously. Sometimes we end up drawing cards 3 times in a row, or we don't get what we want, or the bird feeder doesn't really cooperate with you. Should you really re-roll the bird feeder a 3rd time in a row to get that fish you were wanting, right? And you end up losing by 3 or 4 points, and if you look back on it, you could have used that turn to score some more points. So those are my first 2 tips. Plan your first 4 moves, make every move count, and the next tip is do not play 2 games in a row. I know that's weird to say because I do that all the time, but if you're seriously going for the record, you need to step away from the computer, take 5-10 minutes, get a snack, get a drink, go outside, and mentally reset. Like I said, 624 turns. I did 598, 23 games. It's just really taxing on the mind. Sometimes I would only play 2 games in a day. And what happens? You get tilted, you get kind of click happy, and that's when sometimes you can make a mistake. And you get on that 8-game win streak, and someone says, hey, you want a rematch? And then you start playing again, and just because you're not fresh and you're not thinking critically, that's when the streak ends. Denials are crucial. Denials are crucial. I'm putting up some birds here just to look at. These aren't any high point birds, but study your opponent's bird, and these denials can pay off in the long run. I found during this win streak that I denied my opponent 2 or 3 good birds that they needed. They didn't have a wetland bird, and maybe that mallard or ruddy duck is important to them. And if you can fit it within your strategy, of course you can't deny every good card, but if you can fit it to within your strategy, it can really slow down your opponent and be great for you. If they're having trouble with food, maybe this spotted towhee, even though it's 0 points, if you grab that instead of them, you really messed up their strategy. And then, of course, maybe some egg layers, chipping sparrow, mourning dove. If you can grab those early on and stifle your opponent, I think it's worthwhile. Now, I do want to say these tips are not an equation for automatic victory, right? No one is undefeated, at least not to my knowledge. So you could achieve all of these tips and still not win the game. This is just this consistencies or commonalities that I saw. So, use at least one tucking bird. Before I go into this, I do want to give a shout out to Wingspan.com. They were gracious enough to let me use their card graphics. I just like how it is just nice and neat, the bird cards posted for this presentation. If you go to that website, you can check out some Wingspan gameplay, some new content, and they release all types of Wingspan articles all the time. So, check it out. As for the tips, the fifth tip I have, for these wins, I looked back and saw some of my boards. Use at least one tuck bird if you can find one. I know this isn't always the case. Sometimes you're dealt a bad hand, and there's so many tuck birds now with the expansions coming, but grab you a pink power tuck like the snow bunting, and it's going to accumulate over time. Or maybe the ruff gets you some peripheral points that you didn't really realize you were scoring 8 points off the ruff. Or maybe like the violet green swallow or the barn swallow, it's your main go-to grassland bird that you're scoring all these points on. So I would say if you can help it, grab at least one tuck bird. All right, next tip, go with the sure points. A lot of times in round 4, you've got an engine going and you can score 6 to 7 points, which is amazing, but sometimes you accidentally try to reinvent the wheel, almost like you're playing birds or you're guessing on bonus cards. You play that 4-point bonus bird and you kind of cross your fingers and hope something good happens, when really, looking back on it, you should have taken the boring turn. Just run your engine, probably lay some eggs, and 6 points in round 4, there's 5 turns, that's 30 points added to your board. So I'm not saying you can't play big bird point bombs or bonus card birds if that's your best option, but if you have an engine and you've got some sure points, I found I won a lot of games just going with the sure points. And then my last tip, the 7th tip, grassland is still ideal. In my opinion, it's still the meta habitat. Unless we find some forest birds in the expansions that give us more cards, or the wetland birds that can give us some more food without sharing to our opponent, you can't neglect the grassland. The majority of my games ended up in the grassland, and that's how I scored the most points and beat my opponent. I had one full tuck scenario in this win streak in the wetlands, and it's just in my opinion, a little bit rare to see several full tuck games in a row. And so for consistency's sake, again, don't try to reinvent the wheel. The grassland still works. So let's review. Plan your first 4 moves. Make every move count. Do not play 2 games in a row. Denials are crucial. Use at least one tuck bird. Go with the sure points. And the grassland is ideal. Maybe you can be the next person to break my record. 23 is standing as it is, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.